Okay, let's get going, shall we? This is Paul Sims again, speaking to you from London at the eyeforpharma HQ, and you are here for a webinar which I am hoping you can all see on your screen in front of you. It's called Lean Marketing Innovation for Generics, and as you can see, I have a couple of excellent people who have been kind enough to join me today, and I'll introduce them in just one second. We've had a good response to our notices about this webinar. I think that at the last count we had 990 people, so nearly 1,000 people signed up, and I can see that a large number of you are listening in right now, which is great. That's a fairly normal number for our webinars. That's about what we typically get. But I'm very pleased this time because, of course, it's a topic which we've not really focused on, probably for around about 15 years, which is looking at generics and indeed what innovations, ideas, and working practices can generics companies bring to the table, and what can we learn from. Obviously, we know that generics companies have reduced sized budgets compared to our big pharma cousins, yet they still must create a superior customer experience. They still must explore digital tactics and new innovations. They still must develop more scientific communication, and they obviously have to be very watchful over how those dollars are spent. So in the introductory website, you may recall I wrote necessity is the mother of invention. In other words, that need may indeed have created a leaner way of thinking. And we're going to hear in just one second what Anne and Petter have to say. You may also notice that we did originally have a third speaker, a lady called Ursula, who was going to join us. Unfortunately, just this morning she's been unable to. We did try and find a replacement at the very last notice, but we unfortunately weren't able to do so. Nonetheless, I am confident in Anne and Petter, and if we finish a little bit before the hour this time, then hopefully you'll forgive us for that. Okay, so let me introduce the two of them. Anne graduated as a medical doctor, has worked as a vice president of strategic marketing for women's health for nearly 3 years. Before that, at Actavis, and she was actually a general manager in France for various generics companies for more than 10 years. I asked Anne to tell me something beyond her world of work, and she told me about her very little dog, Virgule, who always works, is always by her side, and right now is working underneath her desk. And I don't believe that we'll be hearing from Virgule, but because she's apparently very well behaved, but is here nonetheless. Now, Petter has spent 25 years in pharma, has worked for Actavis since 2010 in various different names and guises. He's worked as a VP for business excellence, in sales, in marketing, various different positions, and before that with Zentiva, before that with Ivex. So effectively he spent 16 years in international positions at generics companies before that was with originator pharma companies. He trained actually originally as a sales rep and as a biochemist by education. When I asked Petter to tell me something about his life outside of work, he told me about photography, and then perhaps even more enthusiastically, he told me about food. Apparently he doesn't combine the two very often, but maybe watch out for his recipes coming to you anytime soon. So that's enough from me. What I'd like to do is to just hand over the microphone to Anne and Petter, who are just going to speak for a minute or two on their positions and how they feel that their work is actually progressing at the moment as generics companies, the environment that they're in, and what they believe to be priority at the moment. So, Anne, shall we start with you?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. I don't know where you are sitting, all of you. That's a tough question because the environment, as you say, as you know, is moving around constantly, and so I will try to expose you to what are my constant key obsession in that generic world. I think that the first thing we need to remember as marketer in generic is that first thing we sell and promote is our brand, the brand of our company. And because we have large portfolio, and that's what the people will remember the most. That marketing is along all processes, as in any company, in any business, but generic is specifically highly involved with marketing and sales from the start, from the product development, from the choose of the product, etc. And what makes us maybe special for some of you is that we are gross margin driven. That's what is our constant focus, is to increase our gross margin in value and in percentage everywhere in the company, and sales is serving the gross margin. That's what is giving us our results. And last but not least, for the execution of our programs, I think that the most important thing is that we need to adapt to local situation. There is no country in the world which is the same. And the generics have been used by the countries for various reasons. Economic reasons are always at the center, but the way it has been applied in each country is very different, which makes very different dynamics in each country. So you cannot make marketing in generics without taking that in account and the ability to adapt. Maybe Peter, you can add something?
Yeah, hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Anne. You put it pretty nicely. Generic industry, if I limit myself to Europe, generic industry models in Europe vary from pure commodity markets as in United Kingdom through tender markets, retail markets, through to the markets where still the majority of the tools used for selling the products are going to doctors and detailing to doctors, such as Central Eastern Europe. So how the generic companies operate depends on the market conditions and depends on also on the portfolio available for this market. So the generic company has to, in order to take good advantage or in order to do good results in the market, they have to act locally and they have to be very flexible in their thinking, in their activities, and in their budget. And they have to be also very fast because the generic environment in the country changes in months. It's not like in years when you launch the new product. Original, then you have the patent protection for a few years. You know, in generic industry, the decision making is fast in terms of weeks or months. The number of the products is more than 100 or 200 promoted, means promoted products where we do the marketing activities behind. There are tender models or tender countries where the marketing expenses or marketing activities are very lean, as more business to business. On the other hand, there are, as I said, more prescription-driven activities in some market. So the innovation for generic is to understand the needs on every single market and to be able to fulfill these needs and to be able to operate in the different market environments. That's from me.
Thank you. Yeah, really great, succinct explanations there. Much appreciated. We have a good audience, as I mentioned earlier, and so what I really hope is that, particularly as there are two rather than three of our speakers today, that we can make this a good conversation. So please take a look at the right-hand side of your screen. You'll see the Q&A or the questions box. Write a little hello in there so I know that you can hear me now. And please do use this throughout to make sure that you get your questions answered. We will be coming to you throughout. I'm getting lots of hellos coming in, so thank you very much for that, everybody. The other thing I would like to do is to ask you a few of questions just like this one. Now look at your screens, if you may, and it should pop up. What is the biggest barrier? So what is the biggest barrier? What I'd like you to do is to choose one of these things. I've been quite difficult to only enable you to choose one. What's the biggest barrier preventing you from delivering improved ROI in your marketing, which of course is so much what Petra and Anne will have to think about in their everyday lives. So is it lack of desire, no burning platform? Is it a lack of senior level support? Is it a lack of capability and know-how? Is it a regulatory and external issues which often get the blame? Or is it a lack of organizational or technological ability? So that's obviously a specific form of capability there. So I can see that about a quarter of you have voted so far. I'll hold that open for 5 more seconds. Let's get those votes in. Come on, everyone. 5, 4, 3, 2-1. Okay, thanks everybody. Let's have a look at the results. Okay. Right, you should be able to see that on your screen. We've got 4% only with a lack of desire, and the majority actually feeling it's down to our own ability. But otherwise, it's actually reasonably even in results. I'm not sure if this surprises you, Anna or Petter, but I'd be very interested to know what you would have answered to this and what it actually means in your organizations when that is a deficit that you're facing. So should we go back to Anne again?
Yeah, I think the lack of desire and specifically the burning platform for improved ROI, marketing in generics is a kind of daily story. So you have the burning platform below your feet constantly. And what is the more important, regulatory and external issues is not the real challenge for getting a better ROI in marketing. Providing you align with your regulatory people, etc., to approve your material. But in our organizations, we tend to turn around anything in a very, very quick time. I think that's what makes us special, is that we are extremely fast at turning around any activity, at choosing an activity, executing on the activity, changing, coming back, and so on and so forth, and adapting. And that's the strength of organizational ability that we have, that we learn by necessity, because we need to run faster than competition. The senior level support in a generic company is always there because they have probably a burning platform which is burning even more than for us, and so on and so forth. So that's a constant obsession. Peter, do you have something else to say?
Well, you're absolutely right. If I comment the first one, no burning platform, I would not comment on that. Lack of senior level support and funding. I think everybody cries for more funding to do more activities, and more on the original companies and the generic companies. Everybody would like to have the more money to spend to do the products. I think the problem is how to spend those money wisely, behind which activities it put the money and the efforts to ensure the improved return on investment. Lack of capability and know-how, that's interesting, and lack of organizational and technological ability. That's going hand in hand, because know-how and the technological ability, you need to create the process. I think we have been very happy in the last companies which I worked for, because we try to improve the know-how to get the best talent to the company and to make the processes and the technology as flexible and as helping business as possible. But I can imagine that this is not always the issue everywhere, and there are always gaps. You can be always better in the technology. You can have more. You can have more vehicles. You can have more marketing channels used. Again, it goes to the question: will that really make a difference? What is the capability and what is the tool which will make you the most? There are activities which are totally necessary. There are activities which are nice to have. To be a generic company and to be a profit-driven generic company and growing, you have to assess these tools and these activities on the daily basis with the general managers to assess what is the most profitable, what is the most desirable activity, and so on. With this assessment and with this challenge, the know-how is developing inside the company and the capability. The discussion improves the know-how and the capability of the management as well. So this goes hand in hand, I think. Otherwise, no surprise here. Yep.
Okay. The reason I just hit those is because what you were actually leading on to there was this next question, which I want to go straight to, because
Okay.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see if the audience were faced with what you actually described to me in the preparation for this call is actually not an uncommon situation, unfortunately. If you immediately had to cut your marketing budget by 20%, which one of the following would bear the majority of those cuts? Again, I'm forcing you to choose only one here. So it'd be very interesting to see what the audience thinks when faced with the axe-wielding job of having to cut something, what they would actually choose as unnecessary. So I'm going to hold that open for a few more seconds, as only about 20% of people have voted. We've got channels, we've got customer data, we've got face-to-face interactions and visits. That's obviously a lot of rep activity. We've got unproven or new digital innovations, which we always talk about as one of the important things for the future, of course, and then traditional brand marketing initiatives. That obviously doesn't include any rep activity, that final one. So we're up to 50% of votes, so let's have 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much, everybody. Got a decent number of you voting there. Let's have a look at the results. Okay, so it's digital, supposedly the great future of our industry, taking nearly 2/5 of the answer there, and customer data a real minority, right down at 2%. So clearly that is considered as vital by most people. So I'm again very interested to know whether the wisdom of the crowd is similar to the wisdom of the panel, and whether or not our 2 panelists would choose similarly if they are facing those kind of situations.
Oh, that's a tough question.
Oh, I didn't say it's going to be easy.
Yeah, I know. I probably, if I would have answered, I probably would have reduced the number of channels. Because my tendency when I have to cut a budget to focus it on very few and relevant action and items. It's to avoid as much as I can carpet bombing. So the number of channels is one of them. In addition to that, I think that something else which I tend to do is not to do the obvious. Because when you don't do the obvious, people are seeing you. Of course, that means that you are taking risk. So I would not cut the unproven new digital innovation. I would rather cut the traditional brand marketing initiatives and take some risk. So I would reduce the number of channels and insist on what makes me special. Because in generics, what you have to say, the marketing question that you have to solve in the vast majority of the country, that your product is just non-differentiated from other products. So that's a bad start for a marketer. Okay? So you sell the same thing than the others with the same outcome. Then you have almost the same price. Then, as we are in a regulated environment, your distribution strategy is difficult to differentiate. It can be done, but it's very difficult. So what do you have? The way you operate, the way you talk to your audience to be different and to add value. So that's why my answer would be like that.
So, Peter, would you agree?
Slightly disagree, but this is nice, no? Because no, Anne was more responsible for, you see it on her profile, women's health portfolio, which is a little bit different. I'm pure generic guy and business guy. Female care or women's health care, it has different features than pure generic. So from her point of view, that's 100% correct. From my point of view, where I speak about generics, and this is nice to have the differences, no? Because we can have a discussion, and now the discussion comes to the better understanding and the new ideas. So for me, 2% on the sourcing. Nobody wants to cut the data or customer data. There can be 2 reasons. Either they are so cheap that they would not amount for 20%, or it is long-term contracts, or third, it can be they are so vital. I think they are very vital, and they can be very expensive and so on. Not having customer data, you could be blind, or the company could be blind. I would not do that. high percentage on unproven digital or new digital innovations. Maybe the word unproven can be somehow suggesting if it's not proven, then we cut it because it's not proven that it will give you some results. So why don't we cut it and focus on the traditional one, which can be biased a little bit. 15% face-to-face interactions visits means people seeing doctors or a pharmacist. This is very dangerous. I know some companies went down this line. If the cuts need to be 20%, then you may somehow put even the cuts even here. But I would not start with that because then you are losing the contact with the clients, and that could be dangerous. Traditional brand marketing we can always reduce. If we can start with that, probably yes. But I would say I would agree with unproven, apart from Anne, because she would keep that. I would not be so in favor on unproven new digital informations being on the generic side. Total number, the number of the channels used, I can agree with that. I would keep sales interactions visit as much as possible, so cut it the least probably. That's my
interesting
feedback.
is that's historically been, of course, the source of the greatest cost, according to most big pharma companies.
Yeah, many companies, many especially companies went that road because they said the model is changing from detailing, means visiting the doctors, to retailing, means the pharmacy and wholesaler is important, and doctors are not more important. Of course, it's true in some countries. It's less true in some other countries. You can see the gradient, Western Europe versus Eastern Europe, but even in some countries which could be perceived as Western Europe, then you see that if the company cuts the sales force, there are some companies, generic companies growing, and if you analyze which one, then you see that they still keep the sales force going to the doctors. So, and I have seen that not only in one company. So the model is changing from detailing to retailing. And then there's endless question and endless discussion, how fast and in which country it will happen when, and how ready and when should we be ready. And that's the miracle, that's the trick. When you should not be ready too soon, because then you lose the business, or you cannot be ready too late, because then the other will take the business from you, if that goes to retail. You need to understand the country and the development. And then many companies did it in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. The biggest challenge is that calling doctors and calling pharmacists is not exactly the same story, specifically when you are in countries where the substitution right is present, and even worse or even better when it is enforced. So then the quality of your sales force and what you are asking them to do is not exactly the same. You don't need the same number, and this balance and this change you have to operate at a local level, from doctor model to pharmacist model, needs to be tailored. This is lace work for a general manager to adapt that work. So cutting sales force is always something. First of all, in generic, our sales forces are in general very relatively teeny. We don't overspend on sales force by definition. So when we touch one sales force guy, we cut our relationship with our customers, with our key customers. So it's something that we take that very seriously.
Yeah, okay, exactly. We should think twice before doing that. Yep.
I'd like to just go, if it's all right with you, to some of the audience questions. I'm getting lots in, so that's great. Keep them coming, please. Sure. A couple of interesting ones. I guess people, again, I also have a big pharma background, and we talk a lot about the changing nature of customers, customer types, obviously the payer and the patient being the greatest two introductions, but many others as well. I'm wondering, people are wondering whether or not you have a similar questions in your lines of work. Who are your key customers and stakeholders for your targeted marketing efforts, and who gets the investment nowadays? And then the other question was in response to what Anne said about differentiation. Can you give some examples of where this differentiation has been done successfully and noticeably in a generic product, of course? Wondering if you can give us some examples. So either of those two questions can be answered.
If you go to the model, there are three big models, like Peter was saying, what we call in our jargon the doctor model, where you develop prescription and where when your aim is to build the market. It's very close to the ground model. The trick here is to choose the appropriate product, because we have, as Peter was saying, very, very vast range of products. And then you build the market, you build the prescription. That's very often in Eastern countries in Europe, but as well you find that in Asia or in other countries in the world. Then you have the pharmacist model, and when you have a doctor model, you don't have a pharmacist model. If you have a full substitution market and you have only generics in your portfolio, you don't call the doctors. You cannot afford to call the doctors. You call the pharmacist. And then you have the tender, and the name of the game here is to take share from originators and from other competitors. This is where we have that differentiating issues a lot, because how do you do that? You have the same price, you are substituted, everybody is interchangeable. So how do you differentiate yourself? So you can differentiate yourself in the service you give to pharmacists, and as well in the way you operate with pharmacists. I will give you a very, very simple example, which is absolutely not possible to see from outside. Let's imagine a pharmacist model completely driven by discount market. And this is a direct sales model. So the people the sales reps are taking orders, not for the entire business, but for a good chunk of it. The name of the game here is to make your people take orders for your most profitable product. And you have 250, 300 reference in your portfolio. So we developed with one of the company I've been working with, I was leading the company at that time, in our CRM system. And for me, this is a marketing initiative, a sophisticated algorithm enabling the sales force to see on their screen while they were taking the order several things. First of all, the average consumption of each product and an assumption of remaining stock coverage in the single pharmacy, which could tell them a suggestion of how much they should reorder. You cannot imagine the time they won and how much time they could devote to their customers to talk about their systems of whatever around them in the pharmacy. They could see the list of high margin products, not yet part of the usual set of products ordered by that pharmacy, and start to work on plugging them in. And during the order taking operation, they had a screen light, green, orange, and red, which was telling them if the order they were taking was a good GM, gross margin order. Results, very quickly we saw a change in our gross margin globally in the entire company, because we were focusing on what matters. And that made the marketing team more accurate in finding what makes my most profitable product special. How can I make my most profitable product special? So then you can develop anything from, okay, they are all in the environment of, I don't know what, dermatology, for example. Then you will build some dedicated events or training in dermatology and push your customers to work more with your dermatology lines. Does it answer your question, Paul?
Yes,
Hello?
I think that does. And actually, it wasn't my question; it was an audience question. So let me know if that was answered there. And then there was also the other question about the different customer types. Maybe Petty, you can have a go at that one.
Yeah, I will go with that one. I just want to say that Anne, there's totally agree with Anne here on the first question, because CRM and how you use the information you have in the company in order to generate the profitable strategy, and in order to use it for the sales. It's the most important in the company, because you have too many products, too many clients. So the clients, basically the price, the regulatory is rather simple, because generic company has a somehow kind of easier regulatory way, even if it's not 100% true, with the patent and IP problems and so on. The pricing, we always try to say that the price, you cannot say price, you cannot set the price in the generic company. The pricing body, either ministry or a pricing or insurance company, depends on the country, is setting for you. There are rules how to set the price of the generic product. In some countries, you have to be 35% cheaper, then every next one has to be 5 or 10% cheaper. So basically, you cannot play with the price. You have the price of the originator, and you have the mandatory generic discount, and here is your price. The reimbursement, though, is a little bit different sometimes, because based on the price, you can go a little bit lower, and you can have better reimbursement, more to play with. What is important is, in many countries, because of the price of the original products have been on the higher level, or whatever you can say high, is that these products might be limited to certain diseases or to certain specialty of the doctors, like cardiologists only, but not general practitioners. In oncology, for example, I do not limit myself only to Eastern Europe. In oncology, if you have the product, which is, as effective as, for example, paclitaxel, but it has less side effects, but it's much more expensive, then it is limited to the second-line treatment, not the maintenance treatment or the first-line treatment. So by decreasing the price, either you get access to the general practitioners for the normal products, such as hypertension or whatever combinations, psychiatry and so on, or to be more special and even more West European understanding, you can have, if you will somehow put the product to the price level, for example, with Vinca alkaloids, but the product has less side effects, then you get primary treatment, maintenance treatment, and then volume goes up. So then you have to work with the doctors, with the different physicians as well. So physicians are very important. Depends on the product, depends on the country. Retailers or wholesalers and the pharmacies, and put it pretty nicely. This is the key, this is the bread and butter of the generic company. Activities towards the patient, though, I would say there is a potential to exploit this a little bit more, because I have not seen too many activities of generic companies focused on the patients. There are some, of course, there are some educational one and so on, but this is nothing which we would do as the first activity. Maybe we are wrong, or maybe I was wrong in my business yet, and we definitely are moving towards that. We are moving towards the digital one, but the activity, because you can imagine there is 20 other products with the same molecule. If you are a generic company, how would you differentiate yourself? And we speak about prescription products, so you cannot advertise. So this is not easy to assess the patients. I have seen some activities or some thinking about how to address the patients, how to talk to them, and how to get them involved. That this did not work well yet. Maybe there's a future. There probably is a future with these digital activities, but that is what I would say generic companies not necessarily do at the first place.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That was a really comprehensive answer, so I appreciate that. I want to just
I'm
quickly...
talking too much, yes? Okay.
No, that was not the implication at all. You need to take a compliment first.
Okay.
What I want to do is I want to ask people kind of the opposite question from the one I just asked previously. So if you look at your screens, you can see this now. If you had to immediately increase marketing spend by 20%, which of the following would enjoy the majority of that increase? So obviously the opposite of what you did before. It's the same 5 answers that are being here, and once again you can only choose one. So it'd be very interesting to know whether this sort of is the polar opposite of what we saw before, or whether or not actually it's more nuanced than we indeed thought before. So Got about a third of you voted so far. I shall hold it open another 5 seconds. Let's get those answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much, everybody. Let's have a look at the results. Okay.
I wonder if that sometime happened to somebody, to talking to your manager and say, hey, you have 20% more.
Indeed, indeed. Okay. Well, digital is once again the winner, but actually what was around about 27%, I recall, on the traditional brand marketing has gone right down to 1. What was at 1% on the customer data has gone right up to 17, and the other two are pretty much the same as what they were before, around about a fifth of the vote each. So it has some similarities and some differences. So clearly, the digital stuff is where you would spend the money if you could, by a factor of more than 2 compared to anything else. And then in second place is that number of channels that Anne talked about reducing. So interesting to see that it's not quite the same, is it?
How we should comment it now, no? Because it's gambling, no? You have 20%. And maybe people think, okay, I got 20% for this year, but it will be somehow gone next year. So let's do something which we never tried to do, and do the new digital innovations, because we have enough reps. I am happy that increasing the people, the face-to-face visits, the sourcing of the customer data, this is questionable, because there was a low percentage of cutting in the previous, but so there is somehow indication that these data are vital, but still there are somehow people who try to get more customer data. Good thinking. The question would be what the customer data should be. I don't know, the market research data, more IMS analysis, or more, I don't know, insights or whatever, which can be true. The question is if that's good for the generic company or for more original. Number of channels used, I would totally agree. Yeah, fine. People are trying to do the new things here. I'm still happy that the increasing face-to-face visits, I told you I'm a traditional guy. I still believe that this is the bread and butter of the generic company still. The channels used, that can be retailing, detailing, tender activities are very important here, but that's probably not what we speak about here.
Robin Maiden from Maiden from the audience says, clearly digital is not a core activity yet. It's seen as more disposable than the others. It gets cut, but also it's not core. And that, I think, says a lot about our industry in general. That's my own personal comment at the end there, in terms of how willing we are to consider digital innovations compared to other industries, perhaps. So a couple more audience comments coming through. So, sorry, what were you saying, Peter?
Well, we had a discussion 2 years ago in our company to start digital activities, media listening, TV channel, Facebook, and so on. I have not seen the big pharma or pharma company who does that, because here is the problem of compliance, or here is the problem of the discussion, because you cannot say too much because it's about prescription products, so it cannot be on the public space so freely. One bad person, one troll can destroy or can create you a lot of troubles. So if you want to go that way, then you need to have a team who will do that full time, and this should be pretty team, and this should be team who does it on professional basis, creating the content, which is not the biggest problem. Problem is, how do you manage if somebody tells you, yeah, I used that product and I was almost dead after using that product. This is the compliance issue, because then you have to ask him, you should report that through the doctor and report the side effect. How would you deal with that on the digital media? So the digital media, which traditional with pharma companies use, is a one-way communication, not so much allowing discussion, because the discussion could be somehow misleading or somehow dangerous. And we speak about health, we don't speak about the food supplements, we don't speak about cosmetics and so on. We speak about the products which can have and all of them have some side effects. So we had a serious discussion about that for quite a few months, and we never went that way, I would say. Maybe some other people have the different experience, or for some other portfolio, or for some products, but I have not seen that as something which we would like to do.
If you talk to patients, I fully agree with you. It's always a trick, and I think that using the digital tool for reaching out the patients is great to build your brand and your image as a kind of storytelling. But where digital marketing with interaction is maybe of profit and is of profit is with your core target, your physicians or your pharmacists. I've been using that several times with phone calls, for example, or interaction with the web, and that's working because this is increasing the number of touch points that you have with your core target. And in that case, you have much less of the regulatory issue than the one you may have when you want to reach out to patients. And in the various elements, for me, increasing the face-to-face, when you have 20% more to spend, first of all, you never know if this 20% is forever. Okay, so you have to go to activities which are flexible enough and which will give you a return on invest immediately to prove that it was working, then you can reinvest. So you have to go to sort of proven in your experience and expand and go further. And face-to-face via digital marketing to the customers, not to the consumers, may be one of the avenues to do it. So that was my point on digital marketing. Great for the customer, not so difficult for the consumers.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Anne. Totally agree with you. Absolutely.
Okay. So we've got some interesting responses there. I'm just going to read out a couple more audience questions, and then we'll do one final poll question for the audience.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people who are asking about the patient issue, which was brought up before. Well, there's lots of different flavors of this question, but people are asking about how the long-term future of patient and organizing patients is likely to follow in generics companies. It's obviously something you were talking about, Petter. And also about, well, Marissa asked a slightly cheeky question. If there's a trend from detailing to retailing, what do you think of retail professionals coming in specifically into the generics companies? And actually, would that consumer-facing expertise going forward be more appropriate sort of work for the type of landscape that we're going to follow going forwards? And then finally, obviously, the digital and the patient's argument is very connected. Patients obviously accessing so much information online, and really is it realistic for generics companies not to go to that and to invest in ensuring the correct information, a proactive source of information is provided? So there's a few questions there, a bit of an assortment. Does anybody wish to take any of them?
I will go with the last one. I totally agree. I would not like that you think that I'm against the digital campaign. Problem is one-way communication. You need to communicate to the patients, even to the patients. Problem is the two-way communication. That could be somehow dangerous sometimes. So, and towards the doctors, with the doctors, as Anne said, the interactive communication with the clients, with the customers, not with the consumers. This is the key for the company. About the detailing versus retailing, yeah, the model is changing, and there is less and less countries where the pure detailing model is, and this is more retailing activities in that countries. There is more and more retailing specialists. Basically, we have the people. We can have three kind of people in the mixed model. We have the sales force who is visiting the doctors. We can have sales force who is visiting the wholesalers and the pharmacies, as Anne mentioned, the CRM model, order taking and optimizing the profit in her answer. And we have the people who are key account management or tender or combination of that, who are working with the buying groups, with the big wholesalers, or who are managing the tenders. And these people are coexisting in the country. They should not, they have the different models, they have the different businesses, they can coexist. In some country, one of these prevails. In some other country, we have a lot of countries, or we had a lot of countries where we didn't have any detailing towards the doctors, but we have the tender and the retailing people. We have tender people almost everywhere because there are tenders in all countries, more or less. And we have the retailing sales force who is working with the pharmacies more and more. In some countries, it is done by the sales force who covers the OTC over-the-counter products, because then they work on the commercial conditions, not only for the OTC portfolio, but also for the prescription portfolio. In some countries, these sales forces are separated. One is retail, one is OTC, and one is detailing towards the doctors. So, but yes, there is more and more retailing professionals and key account management and business-to-business kind of people in the industry. Sure.
Yeah, and that has started. I would say 10 years ago. Started to creep in, and the OTC people are a good match in general for generics when it's very commercial. The difficulty is to be trained in the regulatory environment that we have in many countries, but this is not something that you cannot learn. So yes, people from retailing are welcome in our industry in general. And regarding the digital communication, yes, I agree. We cannot do without the digital communication today. So far, it's about building trust of the patients toward your brand. When a patient is buying or gets a box of your product, which is an INN plus the name of your company, the people need to find out who you are, where you come from, and to be sure that you have your credentials. Okay. Sort of. I think this is the stage where we are today. Some companies in the generic world are trying experiences and have developed some initiative beyond that. I don't see it as a real. To come back to our question, short term, I am not sure it's going to change the GM dramatically. Medium term and long term, probably yes. I am more a believer on short-term and medium-term level of developing tools and digital tools to enable the customers, pharmacists mainly, but as well doctors, to enable the patients to have a good experience with your product. Because our product, the experience that the patients are developing with our product is going through the pharmacist, mainly, even more than the doctor, because the pharmacist is giving physically the box. So I think this is him or her that we should enable to develop a better experience to the patients.
And do you work closely? Sorry to interrupt you, but just aware of time as well. Do you work closely with patient groups, patient organizations? Obviously, that's something that a lot of big pharma companies invest a huge amount in.
No, not really. And in women health, not really. We developed a lot of material dedicated to patients. This was always through the doctors or the pharmacy that we were reaching out to the patients. And some of them were absolutely, it was not product oriented. But with patient groups, no, not in generics. I've been working with patient groups, but in other domain. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, because there is nothing which we can. Yeah, I remember from the last one, we had a special disease on some acquisition coming to us, which we have been somehow generic company, which was cystic fibrosis. Then this is like almost kind of orphan product or orphan disease. Then we worked with the patient group, but this is not the bread and butter. This is not what generic companies do. I think the generic companies should do in the future is to somehow, and I mentioned it briefly, to somehow catalyze or transfer the information about the real life use of the products, interaction, and so on, towards the doctors and towards the system. But this is not a single generic company, because this is not one company can do this. Original company, if they develop product for the disease, they work with the patient group and so on. This is not a generic company. What we see as a problem is to see the compliance, to interaction, multiple prescription. The patient can have the product from the general practitioner and very similar products from internists or something. Sometimes they even prescribe the product with the same active ingredient, or sometimes they prescribe a product where this combination does the side effects. So what I see the generic companies should do is to create or to support to create the environment in the country to share the information, but not a single generic company, but with the state, with the ministry, to do the service and to do the information platform, to support this platform, to improve the prescription and use of the products. That would be, for me, I think, the target which I would go.
Okay. And one question just in, sorry to interrupt you again, Anne, but I'm keen to just get to this interesting question, which just came through from John. We obviously heard about from detail to retail, and there's been one large retailer who has ended up changing quite a lot in the retail space, which is, of course, Amazon. Are you afraid that Amazon, particularly given your emphasis on pharmacists as a customer, might disrupt the generics business? And is this seriously something that you're considering? Is this going to sharpen your game a little if it happens?
I have a very blunt answer to that. It's a distributor. We are used.
Sorry, what?
It's a distributor. It's like a wholesaler. It's the same principle. So it's a new partner. They distribute drugs, whatever their model is. So they buy it from the generic company and they transport it and they deliver it at home to the patients. But I don't see how it could disrupt, except the fact that they will negotiate. But we are used to that with many of our partners. Okay. When you have not myself at least. Of course, we cannot say, okay, they do not exist. I don't want to hear about it. That's not the point. What I mean is that, it's a new player. It's a new player doing distribution. They have no ambition to manufacture and develop new generic drugs, which would be our turf. This is our turf. The distribution is not our turf. That's how I see it.
I think
maybe simplistic.
There are two things. No, I agree with you. There are two things. No, the OTC products and food supplements. You have a lot of even retail partners. You can buy these products in Tesco or in the grocery market, and you still do not count this as a threat. This is normal retail activity. On the prescription products, though, you have to have a license, and in many countries you cannot ship these products over the post. Depends on the legislation situation. From the retailer, from the key account management point of view, they would behave as a retailer, of course, very aggressive one. But what do you think the biggest American retailer? They are also very aggressive, no? So,
even the European one.
Coming. Yeah, even the European ones. So, this is coming. Still blocking because you cannot run the pharmacy on internet in many countries. There are some limits. I don't see the big change because still this is the subsidized business because the pharmacy should ask you or should give you the explanation how to use these products and talk about interactions and so on if they do it properly. For some portfolio, yes, definitely. That's life. It's coming.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm just going to squeeze in a final question to the audience before we go. This was actually a question which was proposed by Anne. So if you take a look at your screen, when preparing your digital marketing, so speaking specifically about digital, which we have obviously been focusing on in the last few minutes, which of these investments is hardest to justify or rationalize? So creating content, creating other ways to bring awareness and traffic to your organization, to your websites, etc., preparing different channels, whether that be emails or websites or social media or whatever, creating compliance or risk mitigation if things go wrong. So that's actually the most difficult investment, or maybe something else that's not on the list. So let's have a look at what you guys think about this one quickly before we finish off. I'll give it 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much, everybody, for voting. Let's have a look. Where are the results? Come on, there we go. Okay, so we've got sort of 2 that seem to be winning here. It's creating other ways to bring awareness, and actually, surprisingly, nearly a third of people saying creating the compliance or the risk mitigation plans. So, Anne, this was your question. I'm not sure if that's a surprise to you or not.
No, it's not a surprise. That's creating other ways to bring awareness. That's a key challenge. The compliance and risk mitigation plans probably deserves attention, definitely, and takes a lot of time. The issue in general is that this is taking you so much time that you lose the momentum of the digital marketing. Digital marketing and digital tools in general are very active. You can iterate and so on, but the compliance and risk mitigation plan is holding you back. So that's the issue that you have here, and you need to bring in the people who may not be aware or concerned by this challenge in the company. But creating other way to bring awareness and traffic, that's a real one for me.
Okay. A final comment for Peter before we finish?
I agree with Anne. Creating traffic, if you do the digital campaign, creating the traffic, this is the key, not easy. Of course, everybody thinks if they create content, they have to somehow renew the content. So, but this is simple thinking. And I already commented the risk and mitigation plan and so on, and the compliance. There is no surprise for that. Creating the traffic towards the digital campaigns, this is the crucial one and most tricky one. And the most dangerous one is the second one, the compliance issues, sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, listen, almost everybody who started an hour ago with us is still here, which says they've either fallen asleep or they actually found it very interesting. I'm sure it's the latter.
Let's go with the second one.
Huge thanks to Anne and Peter. If you've enjoyed today's discussion, then you might be interested in continuing to talk a lot more. We've got 2 major flagship events coming up, one in Barcelona, one in Philadelphia, as well as shortly after that, one's in Miami and Tokyo. So if you're interested in having this type of discussion face-to-face with a lot more people, then I'd be very excited to see you at one of those events. I've got a colleague called Giselle who's going to be following up with a discount code. You've lasted this far, so you need to be rewarded, I think, for attending any of those events, should you wish. I'm getting lots of very nice comments coming in. Thank you very much, Isabel, Erica, John, Ian, Denise. Very nice comments indeed. Yes, there will be a recording available to you, so whether you are here live or not, I will send that to you, don't you worry. That will be hopefully with you before the end of the week. And really appreciate the comments. If there's anything that you think we can do better, any topics that you would like us to cover, any personal messages of gratitude, of love, whatever it is for our panelists, then please do send them through. I'll hold it open for another minute just to allow you to write anything else in that you think we can improve on or do better. Really appreciate your time once again, and I hope that the rest of your day goes fantastically well, and we will obviously be in touch very soon. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a lovely day.